Welcome, future masters. I have some problems to show you a flawless execution of visualization. So make sure you like this video. It's going to be a killer. So this problem was a real pain. He played this move, rook to e7, and I thought, oh man, I know it says there's a way to get out of this, but I sure as heck couldn't see it obviously. This guy's got an attack, and then the first thing I did, I looked at some moves first, and the first brain power move I made was my dad's rule number one. What's he trying to do to me? Queen takes c7 checkmate. Was like, okay. Later on, it occurred to me queen to a8 is also checkmate. Oh man, we're destroyed. So I went through this the hard way without recognizing that queen to a8 was mate. If I would have recognized this earlier, my moves that I played would have been much faster. But I was able to logically conclude things without being forced to realize that I must check him on every move or else I'm getting checkmated. I was responding just exclusively to this threat, not to this threat. And I made all the right moves, but I would have made those moves faster instead of 8 minutes, 24 seconds. So I had looked originally at rook to d1 check, but I thought king to e2. And then I realized that doesn't work for him because that exposes him to the skewer of rook to e1 check, winning his rook, which gives us 3 pieces for the queen. So I ended up playing this move because it's the only move that was decent. Knight checks are worthless, especially in the context of when you look at queen to a8, the knight checks are worthless. So the whole point of rook d1 check is that he has to play king to g2. So let's go ahead and do this. Now I did this in visualization. King to g2, and then I was like, okay, well, knight takes h4 check is pretty good. And then I thought, well, he's going to play king to g3, and then without recognizing queen to a8, which would have prompted me faster to find this move, I go, well, if he goes there, I can just check him. King to g3, rook to g1 check, because king cannot take knight, because the rook would guard this bishop, and bishop skewers, or bishop forks on g5, winning this rook. Again, 3 pieces for the queen. So these moves, realized, oh, wait a second, he didn't go to g3 yet, jerk. So I go rook to h1, no, queen takes rook, idiot. So I go, well, again, I had not yet realized queen a8 is mate. So I'm doing this the hard way, which is why it's 8 minutes, 24 seconds. I realized through all the moves I could look at, rook to d3 check is the only move that's check that doesn't lose. So let's play this as obvious. When you know that queen to a8 is here, man, this whole thing is much simpler. But that's not how it happened for me. So I realized, I'm like, well, if I rook check him, if he takes my knight, g5 is actually checkmating. King to h5, rook to h3 is mate. So he cannot take it. He's got to move to h2, and then I can play bishop to f4, check, stopping this mate threat. And that would give me the option to play like king to b8 or king to d8, whatever. So he plays f3. Well, that's the other move he could have played. I'm like, well, that doesn't matter. Rook takes pawn check. You're still going to h2. It's still the same thing. Queen take, king takes knight, pawn take, pawn forward is mating. So he goes to h2. I hit him with the bishop check, and now I've stopped the checkmates. And easily king to b8 will stop the mates. So That was really devastating. But now I have other ones to show you. I was on fire pretty well. So let's go. What did he play? 3. Really? Oh yeah, that's what he did. So this one, what, material is even? Yeah, material is even. What is he threatening? Well, he's got king to b8. The point is, if I move this knight, his queen to b8 is going to force my king out to the e file when he checks me because the rook guards this. And I look at this and I see his king is potentially unsafe because he's got no defenders. This doesn't defend the king. That doesn't defend it. This knight is in its worst possible place just about. The A file is the worst file for the knight for defense of the king. The queen locked on the other side of the board, not getting there anytime quickly. So in my mind, it didn't take really 20 seconds. Rook takes pawn check, destruction, sacrifice. Now, because my rook on A8, H8 is doing nothing. But this one, I destruction, sacrifice, and bring this one to bear immediately afterwards. And every piece I have is going to be on his king. I'm going to swarm him. So I hit him with the destruction, sacrifice. Rook takes G2. He doesn't take it. I'm like, yeah, you think I care? You're going to take it, buddy. But this brings up a great lesson that when you play these sacrifices, they don't always have to take them. Clearly, king takes rook. All right, let's look at this. King takes rook. Rook g8 check. I'm sorry, not rook g8. Queen to g4 check. King to h1 forced. Queen f3 check. King g1. Rook is checkmate. So really, taking this it walks into a forced mate in 1, 2, 3. Nothing you can do. So yes, he's not going to take it. But you always have to calculate what if they take it, because you've invested material here. All right. So I'm thinking, well, you know what's the same story? It doesn't matter. What I'm going to do essentially is I'm going to check him on the H file with the queen and bring rook to bear with rook to G file, rook to G8 check. So I said, well, I'm just going to play rook takes pawn again. I was mentally prepared to sacrifice the rook once. I'll do it again. Because when I do this, I can hit him with queen to d6 check, which allows the transfer to h6. So watch this is killer. Rook takes h2 check. Uh-oh, he's in trouble. So now there's the transfer move. He can't go to the G file because the rook is the destroyer. So he's in desperation mode. But like I said, the queen goes to d6 to transfer. Now here comes your friend and mine, rook to g8. And that is game over. So that was fantastic. This is what happens. King f2 or king f3 is the same thing. I'll check him on h2 or h3, and the knight and pawns form this wall. With king to f2, queen to h4 check, he cannot move anywhere else. He's not going to go to e1. So that's toast. So now let's go look at this other one. Another killer. All right, what did he do here? He plays. Oh, I had black in 3 of those games, so that's interesting. Okay, well, what do we have here? We have sacrificed an exchange for this attack. So we have a knight against his rook. His rook is doing nothing. His rook is doing nothing. His bishop is doing nothing. His queen is doing less than nothing. His knight is the only defender. But I don't really have a lot outside of, I looked at this, bishop to h6 check. So I go, that's interesting. If he goes to c2, knight f2, and that's game over. I just win his queen with a discovered check. So he's going to play pawn up. And then I get to unleash the beast. But the visualization is the key. Bishop to h6 check, f4. And I thought about it. I had to look through a lot of stuff of knight takes f4. Bishop takes f4 is a mistake because you're dissipating your power. The threat of the discovered check from knight on f4 is devastating. So bishop h6, f4, knight takes f4. Then we have to go, well, he's going to go queen to a4 check. And I thought instantly, so what? King f8. I go king f8. I'm not afraid of a stupid check me again. King g7. You got nothing. That's what I saw. Analyzed was correct. The point of king to f8 was just the saving move. That's the move that allows you to cash this in. Whatever, dude. King f8. Eat that. He can't even check me. My queen's there. But if he could check me, I just go king g7. I don't care. Knight takes. Well, you take with the bishop. You get the queen owning these light squares. The bishop checks, owns the dark squares. We move in. Bishop checks, king d1, queen d3 check. Bishop d2, queen takes his mate. Lines. It's over. It's a forced mate. So that was another fantastic combination and puzzle solution. What did he do here? He did. Oh, we get to play white this time. This one was much more difficult. Took me a longer time. I think it was around 8 minutes. I'm not sure exactly. I don't remember. I was just goofing around with problems, and I started, going on a roll. I go, well, I'm going to come back here. If I can go 5-0, I got to come back and make a video. So, looked at a lot of stuff here. The moves you have to consider. This one is not really so much what can he do to me. He really can't do much to me. We're in total control. It's a matter, we have the swarm of the killer bees. This rook, these two bishops, this pawn, possibly this rook to e1. Every piece potentially can get in on the action, all right? So this is a swarm. And the question is, how does one conduct the swarm for maximum effect? You have to look at moves at like rook d7 check, rook to a6, a6 check. He's got fleeing squares. If we check him with the rook, king e6 is a flight problem. You get a rook check, but he goes king to f5, and you don't really have much. Bishop to d7. So I was like, yeah, I don't like that one. Rook d7, king e6. I don't care for this. Rook a6 to stop the flight to e6. He's got king c7, and bishop b7, king to b7 is like, man, this is a pain. Maybe rook to e1 is good, but then he's got queen to d2 check. Oh, that's terrible. So that doesn't work. I'm like, man, I can't sacrifice this bishop. Bishop e5 to rook to e1 check. He just goes back here, and I'm kind of the same business. And I was like, oh man, well, I can play c5 check. He's got king e6 again, that jerk. What a jerk. Okay, I'm like, man, that's terrible. Rook to e1, he'd get king to f5. So it was like, and all these different sequences of rook d7, king e6 coming here, c5, king e6, rook e1, king f5. So this is a variation of the brute force technique of trying to figure out where this guy is going to go. He's going to play king e6, king f5 to escape. And then after all this, and I looked at other stuff, and I'm condensing the thinking down for you. I don't want to bore you out of your mind. The thing was, he's got this bishop he's got king f5. Well, the only move that stops after king e6, if I play like c5, king e6, well, look, bishop to d7 check cuts that off. And it's like, okay, Bobby, where's he going? He's only got one move. The rule says I'm winning. King D5. I'm like, hey, I'm on to something. Holy moly, I can check him again. And it's like, yeah, I can play bishop to C4 check was the move I looked at. I go, no, idiot, you're on D7. I can't play that move. I go, no, but I got C4 check. So I get to make basically I get to move this pawn up to C4, which it looks like I'm transferring it to C5. But I go C5, King E7, Bishop D7, no escape, King D5, C4 check. This was fantastic. But there was just so many variations. The key point was I ran the checks for the brute force to force him to show me where he was going to go. And then I stopped it. Then checkmate. So it looks like a mate in 3 that's easy, but it was very difficult. I mean, believe me, 28-46, it's worth every point of what it says it is. Oh, I'm sorry, this is a 4-0. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that stuff was fantastic. Hopefully you enjoyed this kind of semi-short explanation of this killer streak. Played some outstanding moves, did some great visualization, and that is the key. It's all visualization. So practice your visualization, and you can do stuff like this eventually. So talk to you guys later. All right. I reloaded the page and it did not crash, so I went 4-0. I'm going to try and do the 5th one here and see what's up. But this one I'm going to do live. Let's see. Well, one thing I'm looking at here is stuff like, well, let's just, brute force him. Rook C2, King E3. Rook on 8 to C3, check. He's got King D4. That doesn't do anything. Oh, yes, it does. King to F4 as well. So I don't really like that. I'm thinking, well, the first thing we have to look at, of course, my dad's rule is he's threatening rook takes check. So the solution is checking to the Stone Age. Check, King E3, Rook 8, C3, check. King to F4. Dude, I don't think that's going to work, but we could play G5, check. King F5, Rook to F3, check, pawn takes. See what that's getting us. I guess we also have E3 check to force a blockade of F takes. Well, he doesn't have to take it, but if he goes F takes, that blocks him from going there. Rook C2, King E1. Rook C1 check, King F2. We could play knight to there, possibly. Man. E3 check, pawn takes. No, we don't check him with the rook. We check him with the knight. Knight to E4 check. Now he's checkmated. King E1, that's checkmate. So E3 check, he can't even take it. He's going to have to move. Check him. Rook C1 check. King D2, Rook 8, C2 check. That's mating, right? Looks like it to me. Here you go. Well, that is 5-0. Under 3 minutes, very good. For a 2700 problem, we'll take it. Bingo. Now that's the real ending.